Right now, inside the corridors of Arsenal's transfer department, there are more moving parts than at any other point this summer. A young academy graduate is being talked about as a possible departure. A centre-back target sits in limbo with no advanced talks. A forward wanted by an Italian giant is edging closer to leaving North London. And two separate European clubs have just placed real, submitted bids on the table for Arsenal players. This is not speculation dressed up as drama. These are confirmed actions, happening within hours of each other, on the same day. If even one or two of these situations break the wrong way, Arsenal could enter the new Premier League season thinner in defence, lighter in attacking depth, and without the reinforcements Mikel Arteta has been quietly pushing for. That is the picture forming right now, and we need to break it down piece by piece. Here is what is actually at risk. Arsenal are already going to start the season without two first-choice defenders through injury. That alone tightens the squad. Layer on top of that a genuine interest from Galatasaray in two first-team names, a director confirming there is no advanced movement on the club's preferred centre-back option, and a released forward who is reportedly a dream target for a major European club. And you start to see how fragile the next few weeks could be for Arsenal's squad planning. Every deal that goes wrong on the outgoing side limits what can happen on the incoming side. Every deal that stalls on defense leaves Arteta exposed at the exact moment his title-winning team needs freshness, not fatigue. If you want the full picture on every one of these Arsenal situations as they develop, hit that subscribe button now, because this window is moving fast and we are going to be tracking every confirmed step of it. The Athletic on Miles Lewis-Skelly. The Athletic's football desk put out a clear statement today. Arsenal maintain they have not actively offered Miles Lewis-Skelly out for transfer. He is not someone the club set out to sell this summer. The report continues that the arrival of an established star like Bruno Guimaraes does not daunt Lewis-Skelly. Already in his young career, he has demonstrated the willingness and the capability to fight for his place against more seasoned professionals. It adds that Lewis-Skelly signed a long-term contract in the summer of 2025. At 19 years old, he recognises he is still developing, and he believes a highly competitive environment like Arsenal is ideal to hone his talents. Here is my read on this. When a club goes out of its way to publicly state that a young player has not been offered around, that is a deliberate move, not an accident. Clubs do not issue that kind of clarification unless speculation has already reached a level where it needs shutting down. The fact that Lewis-Skelly signed a long-term deal only 12 months ago tells you Arsenal see him as part of the long-term plan, not a make-weight in a squad clear-out. What stands out most to me is the framing around competition. Arsenal are not hiding behind reassurance language. They are actively saying that a 19-year-old is expected to fight for his position against a proven international midfielder. That is a statement of intent about the kind of squad culture Arteta wants to build, one where reputation does not guarantee minutes. Jules Koundé and the centre-back search. The next post comes from a source close to Fabrizio Romano's reporting network. It states that Arsenal keep looking for a centre-back on the market, and they are working behind the scenes. At the moment, from both sides, there is nothing advanced with Jules Koundé, but in Romano's opinion, he would be a smart solution because he can play right-back and centre-back. This one needs to be read carefully, because the language is doing a lot of work. Nothing advanced means exactly that, nothing advanced. This is not a negotiation, it is not a bid, it is not even a firm approach yet. It is background interest from Arsenal's side, and an opinion from a respected transfer voice that a certain player would suit the profile. What makes Koundé interesting as a name is versatility. A defender who can rotate between right-back and centre-back gives Arteta squad flexibility exactly at the point where Arsenal are already down two defenders to injury. But I want to be clear with you, this remains firmly in rumour territory. There is no confirmed movement, no timeline, and no indication either club is close to a deal. Treat this as a name being floated, not a signing being built. Gabriel Jesus and Napoli's final target. An Italian outlet report, relayed through a trusted Arsenal source, states that Napoli can now focus on their final major target, Gabriel Jesus, to complete their attacking options. The post describes Jesus as a dream signing and a major ambition for Napoli. What this tells us is significant. The word final matters here. It suggests Napoli have already completed other business this summer, and Jesus represents the last piece they want to add. When a club describes a target as a dream signing, that is strong intent language, but it is still not a confirmed transfer. What I find telling is the context around it. This comes on the same day multiple posts are circulating about Arsenal's front line being reshaped, with names like Barcola, Ndiaye and Yildiz all being floated as replacements. If Jesus is genuinely being lined up to leave for Napoli, That only intensifies the pressure on Arsenal to secure a like-for-like forward before the window shuts. Again, this is interest, not confirmation. No fee has been mentioned, no timeline has been given, and Arsenal have not been reported to have accepted anything. Martinelli and the replacement condition. A dedicated Arsenal news account has posted that the club are reluctant to let Gabriel Martinelli leave without first securing a replacement. It states that with interest in the Brazilian continuing, Arsenal could consider his departure if they find a suitable alternative, and names Bradley Barcola and Kenan Yildiz among the options being considered. More developments are expected in the coming days. This is one of the more structurally important posts in today's cycle because it explains the sequencing of Arsenal's whole left-wing strategy. Arsenal are not simply reacting to bids for Martinelli. They have set a condition. No sale happens until a replacement is lined up. That is disciplined business. It protects Arteta from being left short in a key attacking position purely because a fee arrived from outside. The two names attached, Barcola and Yildiz, are both established wide forwards at major European clubs, which tells you Arsenal are not looking at panic options, they are looking at proven talent. What I want you to hold on to here is the word reluctant. Reluctant does not mean refusing. It means Arsenal have a price and a plan, and until both align, Martinelli stays exactly where he is. Galatasaray's double bid, a well-sourced Arsenal insider, citing a Turkish journalist, reports that Galatasaray have now submitted 2 official bids to Arsenal for Gabriel Martinelli and Ethan Nwaneri. Negotiations are currently ongoing with Arsenal over a potential double deal. This is a confirmed action, not speculation. Official bids have been submitted. That is a fact, and it needs to be treated with more weight than the interest-based posts we just covered. What makes this genuinely interesting from an analytical standpoint is the pairing of names. Martinelli is an established senior forward. Nwaneri is one of Arsenal's brightest academy products, someone many expected to be central to the club's future. A club submitting bids for both, structured as a potential double deal, tells you Galatasaray see an opportunity to do significant business with Arsenal in one negotiation, rather than 2 separate ones. For Arsenal, this creates a genuine decision point. Do they view Nwaneri as untouchable, the way they have positioned Lewis-Skelly, or is his valuation, combined with Martinelli's, enough to reshape their transfer budget for the remainder of the window? Negotiations are ongoing, which means nothing is decided, but this is now firmly a live situation, not a rumour. Julian Alvarez and Atletico Madrid's refusal. A widely followed football markets account reports that Julian Alvarez told Diego Simeone that he wants to leave Atletico Madrid. Simeone reiterated that it is a club decision and that he can only help him from a sporting perspective. It adds that Alvarez's agents were at the meeting as they tried to resolve his future, but Atletico remain firm in their refusal to let him leave. I want to place this one carefully in context. On its own, this is not an Arsenal story, it is an Atletico Madrid story. But it matters to Arsenal because Alvarez's name has circulated in wider conversations about elite attacking targets across Europe this summer. What this post confirms is a private meeting took place. A player has communicated a desire to leave, and the club holding his contract has firmly refused. That refusal is the most important detail here. A player wanting to leave and a club being willing to sell are 2 completely different situations. Right now, only one of those 2 things is true. For any club watching from the outside, including Arsenal, this tells you Alvarez is not currently an obtainable target, regardless of his personal wishes, because Atletico control the final decision and they have made their position clear. Arteta's broader plan for the window. An Arsenal insider, citing a source close to the club, reports that Arsenal are going to keep trying to be active in this window. They are looking at signing 1 or 2 forwards, with a left winger and a striker both a possibility. They are also going to be looking at bringing in a defender who could come into the side to play straight away, given Arsenal will be without William Saliba and Jurrien Timber for the beginning of the season through injury. The post adds that Arsenal have already bolstered the wing with Christos Tsolis and the midfield with Bruno Guimaraes, but they are looking for players who can continue to lift the level of the squad. This is the clearest strategic overview we have had today, and it ties every other post together. 2 forwards being considered, not 1, tells you Arsenal are planning for both immediate impact and squad depth simultaneously. The defensive need is not abstract, it is urgent, because 2 first-choice defenders being unavailable at the start of a title-defending campaign is a real structural problem, not a minor inconvenience. What I find most revealing is the acknowledgement that Tsolis and Guimaraes have already arrived. This is not a club starting from zero. This is a club that has already done meaningful business, and is now targeting the final layer of reinforcements to round out a squad that is otherwise title-ready. The message here is clear. Arsenal are not panicking, they are finishing a plan that was already in motion. Joaquin says, and the fullback scouting, a dedicated Arsenal news account, reports that Arsenal have made contact with Club Brugge for Joaquin says. The Gunners are closely following the 21-year-old fullback and have already carried out in-depth scouting work. Club Brugge are demanding €35 million for the Belgian international, who is also being tracked by Benfica and Porto. This fits directly into the defensive need we just discussed. In-depth scouting work is a meaningful phrase. It tells you this is not a name being floated casually. This is a player Arsenal's recruitment staff have already assessed on a technical level. A 21-year-old fullback with full international caps for Belgium fits the profile of a long-term investment rather than a short-term injury cover signing. The valuation, €35 million, gives us a concrete number to work with, which is more than we have for almost any other name mentioned today. But competition is real here too. Benfica and Porto are both tracking the same player, and both clubs have a strong recent history of developing and reselling young talent from exactly this kind of market. If Arsenal wants Says, they may need to move with real conviction rather than patience. The Court Offside exclusive teaser. Finally, an exclusive post states plainly, Miles Lewis-Skelly not leaving, Ethan Nwaneri impressing Arteta, and a possible sale if the price is right. It promises the latest inside information on Arsenal stars being linked with moves away, with the full story still to follow. This post essentially functions as a summary of everything we have already covered today, and it independently confirms two things we discussed earlier. First, that Lewis-Skelly staying is now being reported from multiple separate sources, which strengthens our confidence in that outcome. Second, that Nwaneri is being talked about in the same breath as impressing his manager and a possible sale, which lines up directly with the Galatasaray bid we covered a few minutes ago. When multiple independent posts from different accounts on the same day are converging on the same names and the same themes, that is a strong signal the situation is genuinely live inside the club, not simply recycled speculation. The left-wing search and Iliman Ndiaye. Now let's move into the bigger picture stories shaping Arsenal's summer, starting with the left-wing situation, because this has been the most complicated puzzle of the entire window. Arsenal's pursuit of a genuine upgrade out wide has hit obstacle after obstacle. Vinicius Jr. chose to renew his contract in Madrid rather than move to London. Morgan Rogers ended up at Chelsea after Arsenal were unwilling to match the valuation. Bradley Barcola now looks set to join Liverpool rather than Arsenal, with Paris Saint-Germain's valuation proving too steep. 3 separate targets, 3 separate breakdowns. That is not bad luck repeating itself. That is a market where Arsenal's valuation ceiling keeps colliding with what selling clubs actually want. Into that gap steps Iliman Ndiaye. He has turned down a significant offer from Al Hilal in Saudi Arabia, choosing instead to stay in the Premier League. That decision alone tells you something important about his mentality. A player walking away from Saudi money to remain competitive in England is a player who believes he still has something to prove at the highest level, and who wants to be judged on performance rather than paycheck. Everton's valuation sits between £60 and £70 million. That is a serious fee for a player who is not currently viewed by everyone as an obvious upgrade on Gabriel Martinelli. I understand the skepticism. Martinelli is a proven Arsenal player with title-winning pedigree, but here is my analytical view on the comparison. Ndiaye offers something genuinely different in profile. He is described as an excellent dribbler, hard-working, and capable of finishing well off either foot. At 26 years old, he is entering the peak years of his career, not approaching the back end of it. That two-footedness matters tactically, because it gives Arteta a wide option who is far less predictable in one-on-one situations than a winger who is heavily reliant on a single stronger foot. The financial logic also makes sense. If Arsenal can recoup a significant portion of Ndiaye's fee through a Martinelli sale, this stops being a reckless marquee purchase and becomes a calculated swap that upgrades variety in the final third without dramatically increasing net spend. And this is exactly why the earlier screenshot about Arsenal refusing to sell Martinelli without a replacement lined up matters so much. Ndiaye is very plausibly that replacement. Every piece of information we have covered today about the left-wing situation is pointing toward the same conclusion. Arsenal are building a sequence, not making a single isolated decision. Sell Martinelli only once Ndiaye or a similar name is secured. That is measured business, not panic buying, even with the season just days away. Declan Rice and the Newcastle revelation. This next story is not about the current window at all, but it tells us something timeless about how Arsenal operate in high-stakes negotiations. and it is worth understanding deeply. When Declan Rice signed for Arsenal in the summer of 2023 for a fee of £105 million from West Ham, the assumption at the time was that it came down to two suitors, Arsenal and Manchester City. That was the story everyone accepted. But a new detail has emerged directly from someone highly placed inside Newcastle United. Eddie Howe made a genuine, serious push to sign Rice, and Rice himself paused to seriously consider it before ultimately choosing Arsenal. Why does this matter now, years later? Because it reframes how we should think about Arsenal's recruitment success under Arteta. Manchester City throwing a late bid into a negotiation is public knowledge, widely reported at the time. A completely separate club making a real internal push, one that was never publicly known until now, tells you Arsenal's recruitment battles are often far more contested behind closed doors than the headlines suggest. If Rice had chosen differently, Arsenal's midfield transformation over the past 3 seasons simply does not happen the way it did. There is also a poetic layer to this story. Had Rice joined Newcastle, he would have lined up alongside Bruno Guimaraes in midfield. Instead, after multiple competitive battles between the two clubs on the pitch, Rice is now set to partner Guimaraes anyway, in red and white, at Arsenal. That is a remarkable full-circle moment. It also reinforces something significant about the current midfield picture. Rice has been Arsenal's most important player since arriving, widely considered the engine and heartbeat of the title-winning side, and a serious contender for Player of the Year honours. Pairing him now with Guimaraes gives Arsenal arguably the strongest central midfield partnership in the Premier League, and it gives a young player like Lewis-Skelly 2 elite role models to develop alongside, exactly the kind of environment that was described in our very first screenshot today. Gabriel Jesus, Bukayo Saka, and the Starboy story. The final piece of today's picture is smaller in transfer significance, but genuinely revealing about dressing room culture and legacy at Arsenal. Max Daumann, at just 16 years old, has already produced standout moments for Arsenal's first team, and the nickname Starboy has attached itself to him, reportedly used by Kai Havertz in a club video alongside the words young and lefty. When Gabriel Jesus was asked to guess who that nickname belonged to, his instinctive answer was Bukayo Saka. He was told he was wrong, that the label now belongs to Daumann, and Jesus accepted that, but added something telling. In his own words captured on Arsenal's channels, he said he used to call Saka the Starboy, that Daumann is probably the new one now, but for him personally, Saka will always hold that title. What I take from this is not just a nice quote, it is a genuine signal about squad hierarchy and respect. Jesus has played alongside Saka for years and watched his entire development from academy prospect to vice-captain. That instinctive answer, reaching for Saka's name first even after a new nickname has taken hold in the dressing room, tells you how deeply Saka's early identity as Arsenal's brightest young talent is still stamped into how his senior teammates see him, even now that his role has completely changed. And that role has changed enormously. Saka is no longer the exciting young player breaking through. He is the face of the football club, one of the most recognised attacking players in world football, and he now carries the responsibility of vice-captain, a title Arteta does not hand to a player he views as still developing. This story, small as it is on the surface, tells a much bigger truth about Arsenal's current identity. The club is simultaneously investing in its next generation, with names like Daumann and Nwaneri pushing for opportunities, while its senior graduates, Saka most of all, have already crossed over into full-blown leadership. That balance between exciting emerging talent and established leadership is exactly the environment Arsenal are trying to protect and strengthen through every single transfer decision we have broken down today. That is where things stand across the entire Arsenal landscape right now. Confirmed bids on the table for 2 first-team names. A defensive plan built around necessity, not luxury, given 2 key defenders are already out. A left-wing sequence that has been years in the making, built around patience rather than panic. And underneath all of it, a squad culture where a 19-year-old academy graduate is expected to compete for his place against a proven international, and where the club's biggest current star still carries the nickname that defined his rise from the very beginning. If this breakdown helped you understand where Arsenal actually stand today, rather than just what the headlines are shouting, make sure you are subscribed, because every single one of these threads, Koundé, Ndiaye, Nwaneri, Says, Martinelli, is going to move fast over the coming days, and we will be here to break down exactly what it means the moment it happens. One final thought before we close this breakdown. What ties every single one of these stories together is discipline. Arsenal are not chasing headlines this summer, they are protecting a structure. A defender is only being pursued because two others are genuinely unavailable. A forward is only being allowed to leave once a replacement is realistically in place. A young midfielder is only being discussed in a sale scenario if the valuation genuinely reflects his worth to a growing squad. Even the stories that have nothing directly to do with incoming transfers, like the Rice revelation and the Saka nickname, point toward the same underlying theme: a club that values continuity, loyalty, and internal competition over short-term reaction. That is the version of Arsenal we are watching build itself in real time, and it is exactly why every one of these threads deserves to be followed closely rather than dismissed as noise. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next breakdown.